Let us now turn to the work of Mike Jackson and the development of his system of systems methodologies, or SOSM. The system of systems methodologies is predicated on two axes. One is the level of complexity or level of systemicity, and then the horizontal axis is the level of diversity, where there are increasing levels of diversity, starting with unitary diversity culture, moving into a pluralism, and then ultimately into competing pluralisms, or what Jackson would say is coercion. On the complexity basis, on the complexity axis, I should say, we've got simple levels of systemicity or complex. So in the simple unitary space, that is traditionally the domain of hard systems thinking. And the tools and the approaches that are characterized there are systems analysis, systems engineering, and OR. We heard about OR at the development of systems thinking and the history of systems thinking around about the time of the Second World War. In complex unitary contexts, however, socio-technical systems and perhaps organizational cybernetics, or quite specifically the viable systems model and complexity theory, for example, they are useful approaches or techniques to use in spaces or in circumstances or environments that are quite complex but nonetheless unitary in nature. However, when we move into pluralistic contexts, we're faced with a different set of requirements. Now, the pluralistic requirement in both simple and complex requires that we use a soft systems thinking approach. So the methodology of soft systems methodology of Checkland, the Ackoff's interactive planning, for example, or Mitroff and Mason's strategic assumption surface testing. These are all methodologies that can be used in spaces that are characterized as pluralistic, whether or not they be simple or complex. However, quite often pluralism gives way to an element of coercion. And in simple contexts, where there's a simple system but a nonetheless coercive one, we need to consider issues of emancipation. So consequently, we're framed there by emancipatory systems thinking, and this includes Werner Ulrich's critical systems heuristics. In complex cases, however, the coercive space probably turns on what we would consider to be problems that are best handled using postmodern systems thinking. It's important to note when considering SOSM that it's ideal to probably start in that pluralist section in the middle there. Most of the systems that we would be faced with are systems that involve human beings, so therefore there are a plurality of objectives, there are a plurality of assumptions. Culture exhibits the necessary or the inherent plurality of the constituent parts, and in a human system, human beings are that constituent part. So if we start with soft systems, it's then possible for us to branch into VSM, for example, in the complex unitary space, or perhaps even systems analysis and the hard systems approaches if it's a simple unitary one. And if, however, the pluralisms give way to coercion, well, then we can focus on using the emancipatory approach of critical systems and Werner Ulrich. Mike Jackson has also identified that there are strong correlations between the themes and trends of systems thinking and those of the social sciences. So taking the four modes of inquiry, the four paradigms of social sciences, of functionalist, interpretative, emancipatory, and postmodern, Mike Jackson has further situated each of the systems approaches according to these. So functionalist approaches are those that are focused on goals and viability. The focus there is clearly on structure. When we're engaging in a functionalist approach, what we're targeting is we are targeting improvement. We're looking for better outcomes and goal achievement. In this respect, we're guided by experts, and our primary checklist there is efficiency or efficacy. It's very, very clear in a functionalist paradigm, and the tools that we would use there would be the tools of hard systems thinking or perhaps the tools of viable systems model. In contrast, in the interpretive quadrant, what we're focusing on there is we're focusing on purpose and perspective. We are looking for possibilities. As opposed to improvement, what we're actually targeting in this interpretive frame is we are targeting a greater or a deeper understanding. In order to do that, we do not want to only be limited by experts who are going to be able to identify improvement opportunities. We want to be directed, I should say, by stakeholders. And what we're looking for there is not efficacy or efficiency, but we're looking for effectiveness. Because remember, what we're looking at is we're looking at purpose and we're looking at the perspective. So in this particular quadrant, what we're looking for there is we're looking for the soft systems thinking tools, the strategic assumptions, surfacing and testing tools, or interactive planning. And in our particular case, we'll focus very heavily on the work of Peter Checklin and soft systems thinking, although Ackoff as well as Mason and Metroff's tools are also quite useful. If we move over into the emancipatory quadrant, what we're looking there is we're looking fundamentally about fairness. Because remember, in the emancipatory lens, what we're talking about with respect to SOSM is where there is coercion. So when there is coercion, we're not targeting structure, we're not targeting possibilities. What we're looking for is we're looking to see who benefits. So in actual fact, we're primarily targeting or concerned with participation. What we're guided by there are not experts. We're not even guided by just stakeholders. We're specifically guided by those that are alienated. And our focus then, our checklist in terms of fairness and where we draw the boundaries in terms of who is included and who is excluded, what our checklist there is a checklist of empowerment. And the tool that is designed for that space is Werner Ulrich's critical systems heuristics. Finally, in the postmodern space, where we've got complexity and we've got coercion, what we're really finding there from a paradigmatic point of view is we're concerned with diversity. So what we're looking for is we're looking for patterns. We are targeting to liberate all people that are part of the diversity. Obviously there, we're not going to be just guided by experts or stakeholders or even just the alienated. What we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at those points of conflict. Because what we're really trying to do in our liberating objective with respect to the diversity is we are trying to build engagement. Now, postmodern systems thinking, and specifically the work of Tackett and White and Panda, would fall into this particular quadrant here. So if we now take these paradigms and we map them back onto SOSM, what we can see is unitary diversities fit nicely into the functionalist paradigm. Those that are pluralistic or those contexts that are characterized as pluralistic, they fit very, very well into the interpretive quadrant. The emancipatory quadrant there aligns very closely with the SOSM area of coercion or the coercive element of SOSM. And then finally, the postmodern one maps up nicely with the conflictual element of SOSM.